Hello, welcome to the CustomNPC's complete tutorial series. In this series, I go over every single feature of CustomNPCs, down to every button on every tab. The videos are split up into the different tabs on CustomNPCs, then later on into more specific things. I'm sorry about the varying degree of audio quality. Editing audio really is not my strong suit. I hope that you find this helpful, and thank you for watching. Welcome back to the CustomNPCs tutorial series. In this episode, we are going over the Global tab. We are not going over dialogues or quests, as those will be in its own video. We also are not going over banks or transport, as those will be explained in the roles and jobs video. In the factions menu, we create new factions or manipulate existing ones. I believe it is a common misconception that the only factions are aggressive, friendly, and neutral. Those are just the default ones created in every world. You can make your own factions. Click Add to create a faction. At name, you change the name of the faction. The ID is the permanent number assigned to this faction. If you use a command that deals with factions, you will use the faction ID. Here you change the color of the faction. Any NPC part of this faction will also have their name set to this color. At Hidden, you toggle whether the faction can be seen in the faction status list of the player's menu, which is indicated by a banner in the player's inventory. Attack by mobs lets you choose whether NPCs part of this faction are attacked by Minecraft mobs. At Hostile Factions, there is a list of every other faction. Clicking on a name selects it, and clicking on it again deselects it. NPCs part of this faction will consider each selected faction as hostile. Now let's go to points. The points a player has determines what their standing is with a faction. Points work like a number line. Unfriendly to neutral is the threshold across from the unfriendly standing to the neutral standing. Neutral to friendly is a threshold to cross from neutral to friendly. Players cannot damage NPCs that they are friendly with. NPCs who they are unfriendly with will be aggroed on sight by the player. NPCs who the player is neutral with will not be aggroed on sight, but they can be hit and will be aggroed if the player hits them. You can define those threshold values here. The points always work from unfriendly to neutral to friendly. If you set the neutral friendly threshold to be lower than the unfriendly to neutral threshold, the mod will be confused and you'll end up with weird behavior. The default value up here is the default amount of points the player has with that faction. So, with these default settings, the numbered line would look like this. And so, if we give the player 1,000 points in this faction, the number line would move like this. If we take away 2,000 points, then it would look like this. Side note, there is no such thing as joining a faction. All you can change are the amount of points a player has with any faction. But you can change the amount of points players have with all factions and change dialogues and quests to give the illusion of joining a faction. Lots of CustomNPCs is faking it. It doesn't really matter what happens on the behind the scenes. What matters is what the player sees on the front end of it. All CustomNPC player information is stored in the player data menu. That includes what dialogues the player has read, the quests they have done, quests they have active, what transports are available to them, the items stored in banks and their faction points, etc., etc. Select a player from the list, then click on Quest, Dialogue, Transport, Bank, or Factions to view all the data pertaining to them. You can delete them from the player data for testing purposes. For example, if you have a dialogue that can only be read before a quest is completed, you can delete that quest from the player data so that you can read the dialogue again. Or, if you have changed the default points for a faction, you have to delete the points from the player data so that it resets to the new default. You can also click on a player and just click delete to give them a full reset. The recipes feature is broken, but I'll go over it anyways, just in case it's fixed. This is where you define custom recipes. Clicking global means you are creating a recipe that can be made in crafting benches and carpentry benches, and clicking carpentry bench means you're creating recipes that can only be made in the carpentry bench. Click add to create a new recipe and it will show up here. You can click it again later to edit it. Add items in this grid here to define your crafting recipe. Then here you place the item you want to be crafted. Ignore damage means that the damage value of the items placed in the recipe will be ignored. Ignore NBT means it will ignore additional NBT tags of the item in the recipe, like for example, ignoring custom names of items. Natural spawns is also broken, but I will go over the menu. Natural spawns is supposed to make NPCs spawn naturally in the world like any other mob. Click add to create a new natural spawn, then select it. Change the name of it here, choose what biomes they spawn in, this slider determines the chance of the NPC spawning on a block in that biome. It compares this to all other natural spawns you have, so a natural spawn with a weighted chance of 50 is more likely to be spawned than a natural spawn with a weighted chance of 5. Clicking select NPC will bring up the clones list. Select a clone to be naturally spawned. Type lets you choose whether the NPC spawns in light or darkness. Linked is where you create linked categories for NPCs. NPCs part of a linked category will all have the same settings and customization. If you change one NPC, you change them all. Click add to create a link category. Click remove to remove it. There are no settings to change here. Go to the Advanced tab video for more information. And that is most of the features of the global tab. In the next episode, we will be going over roles and jobs. Welcome back to the Custom NPCs tutorial series. In this episode, we will be going over roles and jobs. Roles are a function an NPC has when interacted with by the player. The first role is Trader. Click Edit to bring up the role editor. Here you define the trades for the NPC. The two left slots here are what the player needs to offer, and the slot on the right is what is given to the player in exchange for them. You can toggle whether the damage of the offered items is ignored, and you can toggle if the NBT data, like a custom name or enchantments of the offered items, are ignored. Down here you can define a leaked market name. If you create another NPC trader, typing in the market name will give them the same trades. Follower is a sort of mercenary function for the NPC. When you pay them, they will follow you for a certain amount of days. On the left, you put the item or items you want to exchange for the follower. This number here is how many days they will follow you in exchange for that item. The first message up here is what the NPC will say when you hire them. The bottom message is what is said when their days are up. Infinite days toggles whether hiring the NPC will make them a permanent follower. So if set to yes, if you hire the NPC, they will follow you permanently. GUI disable toggles whether interacting with the NPC brings up this menu, where you can tell the follower to wait, or hire them for more days. Allow Soulstone is supposed to toggle whether you can use a Soulstone on the NPC, but it doesn't seem to work. Reset makes them stop following any player. A bank is basically an ender chest with more features. Any NPC with the bank role will bring up the player storage for that bank. In the role editor, you just select which bank the NPC is a part of. To actually edit the bank, we head over to the Global tab. Here, we edit and add banks. Click Add to create a new bank. Name it up here. Banks can have different tabs of storage. Tab cost is what the player needs to exchange to unlock that tab. These tabs can be upgraded for more room. You can toggle if they can be upgraded, can't be upgraded at all, or if they are upgraded from the start. Upgrade cost is the item needed to upgrade. Start is how many tabs the player has unlocked with this bank by default. Max is how many tabs the bank will have. Right click on a banker to open up your bank. Here you can place your items. You can see we have 2 tabs in this bank. I can upgrade this tab to gain more inventory space. And if we go to a second bank, you can see that our stuff is still here. Transporter NPCs will be linked between 2 NPCs. When a player interacts with the transporter, a list of available transports are shown to them, which they can then TP to. You can't set a cost for this without scripting, however. Let's go to Global first. Click on Transports, and here you add categories for transporters. For example, you can have some transports under Category A and others under Category B. Click Add to create a new category, and you can click Open to view all the transports under that category. You can remove them if you decide you want to change it or delete the transport. Clicking Edit lets you rename the category. You can only remove a category if it is completely empty. Now let's go to the role. Here you name what this transport will be called, and if it is available when the player discovers the NPC, if it is available from the beginning, or when the player interacts with the NPC. On the right, you select which category it is a part of. The transport location is the coordinate other NPCs will teleport the player to. This is defined by where the player is standing while editing the NPC. Transporters will only link to other transports in the same category. So I am creating 2 new NPCs who will have the transports place 3 and place 4. They will both be part of Category B. Now as you can see, place 3 and place 4 cannot see place 1 or place 2, and that is because place 3 and place 4 are in Category B, and place 1 and place 2 are in Category A. Transports can only transport to locations in the same category. The location is actually independent of the NPC. If you create a transport, then delete the NPC, it will still show up under the category, so other NPCs can still TP you to this location. If you want to get rid of a transport, go to the Global tab and then go to Transport. Then open the category, click on the transport, and click Remove. The Mailman role. There is nothing to edit here. When the NPC is right-clicked, it brings up the letter writing menu. Type out your message here, then which player the letter is sent to. Here you type the subject of the letter. You can also attach items to the letter that the receiver could then take. The letter will then show up in a mailbox when the player right-clicks it. Companion is a feature that makes an NPC follow you around and age as they go. This menu is where you define the default settings for this companion, so they will start off with all of these stats. Change the age of the companion here. This button toggles if the NPC will age over time. This number is how many ticks along the NPC has been alive. When they reach a certain number, they grow up. If age is set to no, this number never changes. Click Update to change the age of the NPC to what you set it to. These 3 sliders are the default points the NPC has in these skills. This is how much inventory space the NPC has. These are the tiers of armor and weapons he can use. This is the tier list. So if I set his armor to 1 and his weapon to 3, he can only wear leather armor, but he can use any weapon up to iron. To make the companion follow you, you have to use a soul stone, then release them. If you right click the companion, they will sit down. Right click again to make them stand. If you sneak right click, you gain access to their inventory. You can see all the stats of the NPC here. In talent, you can see how much XP the NPC has, which they gain by killing opponents. That XP you can then spend on upgrading their talents. The inventory is where you equip the companion with armor and weapons, or give them items to hold. To heal, they must have full hunger. They need to have food in their inventory, then sit down to eat. This is all subject to change, as at the time of this video, this role is work in progress. The dialogue role is a severely stripped version of dialogues. The start text is the first dialogue that appears when an NPC is interacted with. Here you define dialogue options for the player to choose. Then edit lets you create the dialogue shown when that option is chosen. But you only get one. There's no real reason to use this role. Moving on to jobs. Jobs are functions the NPC will do without having to be interacted with. The bard will play a sound in an area. Click select to grab the sound you want them to play.
Ding 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 ding. Ding 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 ding. Ding 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 ding.
You can toggle if it is played as a record or jukebox or as music for Minecraft's volume sliders. On distance is how close the player has to be for the sound to start playing. Off distance is how far the player has to be for the sound to stop. If has off distance is set to no, it will continue to play even when the player leaves. Eventually it will just fade out when far enough.
Ding 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 ding. Ding 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 ding. Ding 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 ding. Ding 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 ding. Ding 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 ding.
Beacon makes the NPC act like a beacon and gives a potion effect to nearby entities. Effect range is the range the effect is applied, and here, the potion effect always has a time of 5 seconds. The NPC keeps reapplying the effect to entities in its range. The speed is how many redstone ticks pass before the NPC applies the effect again. At effect, you toggle whether it affects all entities, NPCs and players that the beacon NPC considers to be friendly, or unfriendly. Here you change the potency of the effect. At available effects, you select the effect and click the right arrow to move it to current effects. Or select a current effect and click the left arrow to remove it. The double arrow moves all from one category to another. Guard. NPCs with this job will attack mobs that you select here. You can choose individually which mobs they target. Then click the arrow to move it to current targets, or click these buttons to add whole categories to their current target list. NPCs with the item giver job will give the player an item when they are close enough. You put the items you want them to give here, then toggle if they give a random item, give the player all the items, give any items the player doesn't currently have, to only give items when the player has none of these items, or if they give the items consecutively. Note, it will give the items from slot 1 to slot 9. So if you have a diamond sword in the first slot and then cobblestone in the third slot, but air in the second slot, the NPC will give a diamond sword, then give nothing, then give cobblestone. You can choose if the NPC gives these items on a timer, which is defined by the cooldown here in seconds, if they give the player the items one time only, or if they give them the items daily. You can define 3 messages for the NPC to say when they give an item here. Availability options allow you to have the items only be given to player who meets these options. The follower job is for making NPCs follow other NPCs. On the right is a list of surrounding NPCs. You can click on the name or type in a name manually here. If there is an NPC nearby with that name, they will follow them. Spawner. Spawner makes this NPC spawn clones around it when they are attacking. You could choose 6 NPCs to spawn. Dies after spawn toggles if this NPC is killed whenever they spawn their clones. Toggling despawn spawns on target lost to yes means that the cloned NPCs will disappear as soon as this NPC stops attacking. Position offset lets you offset the decimal point of the block the NPCs are spawned. 1 by 1 will make the clones spawn one at a time. All will make them all spawn at the same time. Random will randomly choose which NPC spawn. I would show video examples of this, but it appears to be completely bugged for me and I have no reason why. The conversation job requires at least 2 NPCs. Only one needs to have this job though. Here you can make 2 or more NPCs have a conversation. You type in the name of the NPC here, and then edit what they say by clicking on line. The delay is the amount of ticks between the previous line and this line. The conversation only works if an NPC with the name you define here is present. At quest, you can select a quest to be given to players listening when the conversation finishes. Availability allows only players that meet those options to hear the conversation. Delay is how many ticks it takes for the conversation to start. Range is how far the conversation can be heard. Always will make the NPC speak regardless if anyone is there to hear them. Player nearby means the delay will start once a suitable player is in range. Chunk loader. This NPC will keep a chunk loaded 10 minutes after a player leaves it. Puppet. Puppet lets you rotate the body parts of an NPC to give them different poses. These first 3 yes or no values toggles whether the NPC will keep this pose while doing these actions. In the body part, if you set it to disabled, the NPC will ignore the values defined here and move them normally. Toggling animation to yes will give you a start and end point. You can define different values for the limbs at the start and end, and then it will in between them and make the puppet animate. You can set the speed of the animation here. Builder NPCs will build schematics defined by builder blocks nearby. They will build it one by one. You can have multiple builders to make the process go faster. Go check out the items video for more info on the builder block. The farmer job makes the NPC harvest nearby fully grown crops. You can then decide if they find a chest to put the crop in, drop it on the ground, or just delete them. And that is every role and job. Thank you for watching. In the next episode, we will be explaining dialogues and quests. Welcome back to the CustomNPCs tutorial series. This video was uploaded after I completed the original series, but I'm placing it before episode 9 of the playlist. In my original video on dialogues and quests, I feel that I focused too much on the extra features and fluff that dialogues have, and did not give a clear and concise explanation on how to make dialogue trees. So, in this video, I plan on walking you through step by step how to create a simple dialogue tree. Then, you can use the next video to view all the possibilities with dialogues. So, first step is right-clicking an NPC with the NPC wand, going to Global, then Dialogues. Click Add under Category and name it whatever you want. Then, click Add under Dialogue to add a new dialogue. Double-click on the dialogue or click Edit to open the dialogue editor. Click on Dialogue Text, and here is where you write out what the NPC actually says. So here, I make it say, "Hi, what is your name?" So when this dialogue is shown, that text will show up. Now let's create a response. Exit the dialogue editor and create a new dialogue. This one is going to say, "Oh, that's a cool name. My name is George." And now I'm going to add another dialogue. And this one will say, "You don't want to tell me? Well, okay, my name is George." Now let's get into connecting these together. Go to the first dialogue, then go to Dialogue Options. The dialogue options are the responses the players can choose. The title is what the player will say. So I'll name this one, "My name is @P." And we'll link this option to the corresponding dialogue by clicking on Select Dialogue, going to our category, and choosing the correct dialogue. So now, when the player clicks on this response, a new dialogue with new choices will be shown to them. So let's do the same thing for our other response. Dialogue Options, make a new response, and link it to our dialogue. That is the basics of creating dialogue trees. Each dialogue has a max of 6 responses, but you can make as long of trees and as many dialogues as you want. Okay, so we've created our tree, but to actually get this dialogue to show up, we need to assign it to an NPC. So edit an NPC, go to Advanced, click Dialogues, and here we have a bunch of buttons. We'll get into why there are so many later. For now, click on the first one, select your category, and select the first dialogue you want to show up when you interact with the NPC. Typically, that should be the first dialogue in the dialogue tree. And we're done. You don't need to add all the dialogue responses here, only the first dialogue in the tree. Now when we right click on the NPC, the dialogue shows up with our responses. So now, let's go over the other things dialogue options can be. Besides Select Dialogue, we also have Role, which will bring up the NPC's role screen. Command, which will run a command when this option is chosen. Close, which will exit the dialogue tree. And Disabled, which means this option won't show up. So, we've gone over the basics of a dialogue tree. Let's get just a little more advanced and talk about having multiple different trees. Say you want one tree to show up before a player completes a quest or talks to someone. Then, after they fulfill that condition, a different tree is shown. To do that, we use the availability options. So in this example, we're going to have the NPC tell the player to talk to someone else, then after the player talks to that person, the NPC will have a different dialogue. Let's make our trees. I'm going to skip through this since you should already know how to do this. Okay, so we have 2 dialogue trees and a dialogue on another NPC. So, tree 1 should show up on NPC 1 before we talk to NPC 2. Then after we talk to NPC 2, NPC 1 should show tree 2. To do that, go to the first dialogue for tree 1, then go to the availability options. Availability options will make it so this dialogue can only be read by players who meet all of these conditions. If any one of these conditions is not met by the player, the dialogue can't be read and won't show up. So, go to Dialogue, and set this to be available before. Then select the dialogue of NPC 2. So we have now made it that this dialogue can only be read before we have read the dialogue of NPC 2. Now, go to the first dialogue of tree 2. And instead of setting it before, we set it to be after the other dialogue. Then go to the NPC's Advanced tab, Dialogues, and add the first dialogue tree, then the second dialogue tree. Now when we talk to NPC 1, the first tree shows up. Then we go talk to NPC 2. Now NPC 1 shows tray 2. Here is a common issue people have with the availability options. Often, people don't realize that by not setting any availability options, they are actually saying that this dialogue is always available, no matter what the player has done. In the Advanced tab, when the player interacts with the NPC, the mod goes through the list of all dialogues here and displays the first dialogue that's available to the player. So if dialogue A is available before dialogue C, and dialogue B is available after dialogue C, then the mod will display the correct dialogue to the player depending on if they read dialogue C. But if dialogue A's availability has not been edited, and dialogue B is only available after dialogue C, the mod will always display dialogue A, because the player meets all conditions for dialogue A because there are no conditions to meet. Therefore, dialogue A is always available. And here's 2 random tidbits that I couldn't figure out where else to put in the video. Dialogues are not bound to their categories. The categories are for organization, but dialogue options can cross between categories. Dialogues are not bound to one single NPC. Multiple NPCs can have the same dialogue. And that is a tutorial on how to make a simple dialogue tree. Thank you for watching. In the next video, we will be going over more possibilities with dialogues and quests. Welcome back to the CustomNPCs tutorial series. In this episode, we will be going over dialogues and quests. So first off, let's go to the Global tab and click Dialogues. Here we have 2 gray boxes. Click on Add under Categories to create a new dialogue category. Then select the category and click Add under Dialogue to create a dialogue for that category. You can select it and click Edit or double-click it. ID is the dialogue ID. If a command wants a dialogue, it will ask for this number. At the top, you can name the title of this dialogue. The only time a player will see this is if it is used in a dialogue quest, so you can name it whatever you want. Dialogue text is where you define what the dialogue actually says. Faction options lets you add or remove points from the player for 2 factions when they read this dialogue. Console command will execute a command when the dialogue is read. Hide NPC will hide the NPC from the dialogue screen. Show Dialogue Wheel will toggle whether the dialogue screen uses this old Mass Effect style dialogue wheel. Disable ESC disables the ability to press escape to exit this dialogue. You can select a sound to be played when this dialogue is read. At Setup Mail, you can write a letter to be sent to the player when this dialogue is read. Sender lets you make up a name for the sender. Alright, dialogue options. These are the options the player has to say for this dialogue. The title is the actual option the player sees. Color lets you change the color of the option. Option type dialogue will make this option go to a different dialogue. You select the dialogue here. Disabled means this option won't show up. Role will make the NPC's role screen appear. Command block will execute a command when it is chosen. Close will exit the dialog when chosen. Availability options. If the player does not meet these options, the dialog cannot be read and it will not show up. If this dialog was set as a dialog option, then the option will not appear if the player does not meet these options. At Select Dialog, you choose if this dialog is only available before reading a certain dialog or after reading a certain dialog. At Quest, you choose if this dialog is available after completing a quest, before completing it, when the player has the quest active, when the player does not have the quest active, if the quest is in its completed state, or when the quest is available to be started. Down here you can set if the dialog is available if they are or are not friendly, neutral, or unfriendly with the selected faction. Daytime lets this dialog only be available depending on the time of day. EXP level means that the player has to have that experience level to see the dialogue. If you want the dialogue to only show up once, then you can set it to be available before itself is read. Now let's go to the Advanced tab. In Dialogue, you list the dialogues you want to show up when the NPC is interacted with. You have to list a dialogue here in order for it to show up on this NPC. If you have multiple dialogues, for before quest and after dialogues and such, they must be listed here. Now, here's where I see people getting confused. When interacted with, the mod will run through this list in order and will display the first one it can. A dialogue that had no modifications to its availability is always available. If you list dialogue A here and you didn't edit the availability options, then under it dialogue B and it's only available after a quest, the mod will always display dialogue A because dialogue A is listed first and it is always available. If you want a dialogue to only be available before a certain quest and another dialogue available after the quest, you must edit both of these dialogues accordingly. Set dialogue A to only be available before the quest and dialogue B to be available after the quest. Now let's create a quest. Go to Global and click on Quest. Same as dialogues, you create a category by clicking Add here. The player will see this category in the quest log, so the name matters. Then click Add to create a quest. The quest name is also visible, so the name matters. ID is the quest ID. If a command wants a quest, it will ask for this number. Quest log text is the text that shows up in the player quest log. Completed text is the text that appears when the quest is completed. Reward is the item given to the player for completing the quest. Faction options will let you change the player's faction points when the quest is completed. Command will execute a command when the quest is finished. Repeatable lets this quest be started again. When set to no, it can only be done once. When set to yes, it can be started over and over and over again. And we have Minecraft Daily and Weekly, and Real Life Daily and Weekly, which will make the quest only available to be started again after those amount of time passes. Instant Complete will make the quest immediately complete when the player fulfills the requirements. Complete by NPC means that the quest will be put into a completed state, but have to interact with an NPC named here to receive the reward and fully complete it. Setup Mail lets you send a letter to the player. Next Quest makes it so that once this quest is completed, a different quest is immediately started. Now let's go to Type. Item. Click Edit and you get to put items here. The quest is considered completed when the player has these items in their inventory. Ignore Damage and NBT lets you ignore damage values and NBT data like custom names of the item. So like if you put a wooden sword here, it wouldn't matter how damaged that sword is, if I have a wooden sword it would complete the quest. When take items is yes, the items are deleted from the player's inventory. When no, the player gets to keep the items. Dialogue quest. The quest is completed when the player has these dialogues selected here read. It does not matter when the player has read the dialogue, just as long as the dialogues have been read. There is often confusion here. A dialogue is marked as read whenever the player reads it. That's all the quest checks. Often people will say that the quest immediately completes without them reading it. What actually is happening is that the player has already read the dialogue, so the quest completes because they technically have read it. You have to delete the dialogue from your player data or use the command /nopes dialogue unread player name dialogue ID. Kill. This lets you type in the name of an entity or player, and the number here is how many times they have to be killed to consider it complete. If any entity with that name is killed by the player, it counts. A pig renamed to cow will count as a cow kill. Location. This is used in tandem with the location quest block. You type in the name of a location here, and elsewhere you place a location block and name it so that it matches the location in the quest. When the player is in range, it is considered to be discovered. The player has to discover it while this quest is active. They cannot find it beforehand and then complete the quest. Area kill is the same as kill quest, but all players who have this quest will get credit for the kill if they are nearby when a player gets a kill. This is for multiplayer, like if you have to kill a boss and there's only one of them, all players complete this quest and not just the player who lands the final blow. Manual. Think of manual quest like a scoreboard objective. The name here is the objective name. This is a dummy. It means absolutely nothing. You can type whatever you want here. The number is how many points the player needs in that objective to complete it. Then you set the player points with the command /nopes quest objective player name quest ID objective number point value. The objective number is listed from 0 to 2. This is for making specific quests that don't fall within any of these categories, but you have to use a command block or something for them to work. Now I will create a simple dialogue and quest, and I'm going to be switching to my live mic. Alright, we are now on live mic, so I'm going to show in real time creating a dialogue and quest that will be linked together, and I'm doing it this way because I feel like I explain it better while I'm doing it in the moment rather than pre-recording it and stuff. And so my plan for this one is we are going to have an NPC here who will have a dialogue that will only show up once, so I'll read it and I can't read it again. He will direct me to an NPC who will give me a quest to give him a sword. He's going to have a dialogue for before I start the quest, a dialogue for after I complete the quest, and a dialogue for when that quest is still active. I will not be able to talk to that NPC until I talk to this NPC though. And so let's get started. Let's create our first NPC, Rose. Let's go to Global, Dialogues, add a category, and name it Rose. Let's add a dialogue. We'll name it Greetings because of force of habit. I name all of my first dialogues Greetings. Let's go edit it. In the dialogue text, we're going to have, hey, Brandon wanted to talk to you about something. Wanted me to tell you. I'm going to make 2 dialogue options. What was it? And Justin, okay, to close it. In this, because I want this dialogue to only show up once, we go to availability options, select dialogue, set it to before, select the dialogue, and we select the same dialogue. So now we have set it to be available before itself, so as soon as I read it, I cannot read it again. Let's create our other dialogue here. What was it? I don't know. He did not tell me. Go ask yourself. Okay. So we go back to greetings, go to dialogue options. What was it? Select dialogue, Rose, what was it? Okay, now let's create our other NPC. We named him Brandon. So we're gonna go into global, dialogues, add a new category, Brandon, done. Let's create a new dialogue, greetings again. Hey, my friend Rose finally told you I have something I want you to do. Okay, so we're gonna make this dialogue only to be available after we talk to Rose. We're gonna make a dialogue option. What do you want me to do? And a dialogue option that says not right now. And we're just gonna have that close this dialogue. We will create another dialogue. What was it? I want you to find me a wooden sword. Okay. We're gonna create 2 more dialogues. Greetings. During. This will be what the NPC says while the quest is active. I do not see a sword on you. Go find one. And I'll make it one last dialogue. Greetings after. Thanks for the sword. Pretty sweet. Okay. I'm gonna go back to greetings because I realized I forgot to select this dialogue. Alright. Now, because I have 3 dialogues I want the NPC to say, I have to go to Advanced, Dialogues, and list each of them. Now let's create that quest. Global, Quest. I already have some categories here, sorry, so let's add our own new category. Gonna make it just item. Gonna add the quest. Find a wooden sword. In the quest log, I have been asked to find a wooden sword by Brandon. I always make the quest logs in first person because they treat it like a journal, because Morrowind did that and I like Morrowind. I forgot to grab a wooden sword. So let's go back to... Okay, so here we are. Let's put the wooden sword in here and ignore damage and NPT. Make the completed text. Brandon liked the sword. We'll make the reward just an NPC wand because it's the only thing in my inventory. We'll make him give me 5 experience points. Okay, so let's go back to our dialogue with Brandon. For the greetings after, we're going to set it to be available after that this quest is completed. And then during, we're going to set it to be available when this quest is active. I am purposely not editing the availability options for the first dialogue because I want to show the common mistakes that people make. Okay, hopefully this all works. Alright, so here we are. We have Rose here. I need to talk to her before I can talk to Brandon. So if I try to talk to Brandon, nothing shows up. If I go to Rose, hey, Brandon wanted to talk to you about something, wanted me to tell you. What was it? I don't know, he did not tell me, go ask yourself. And now when I right click on her again, nothing shows up because I set it to be available before itself, so I was only able to read it once. If I want to read it again, I go to Global, Player Data, click on my name, dialogue, and delete it from my player data. Now I can read it again. Now that I have read that dialogue, I can go over to Brandon. pre-recorded yellow here. I forgot to link the dialogue to the quest here, so I'm just going to quickly do that before I go back to the tutorial. Hey, my friend Rose finally told you. I have something I want you to do. What do you want me to do? I want you to find me a wooden sword. Okay, so I have the quest active, and remember, I set that dialogue to be available while this quest was active. But the first dialogue still shows up. Okay, now I'm going to finish this quest. I'm going to give myself a wooden sword that has taken some damage, a lot of damage, and you can see because I set ignore damage to yes, even though the sword is completely broken, he does not care. I gave it to Brandon. Brandon liked the sword, and I got an NPC wand, and if I hop into game mode 2, I got 5 experience points. But when I talk to Brandon, the first dialogue still shows up. Why is that? And that is because I did not edit the availability options for the first dialogue. So, this dialogue is only available after the quest is completed. This dialogue is available while the quest is active. But the first dialogue wasn't edited at all, and so that dialogue is always available. No matter what, it is always available. And in dialogues, because I listed that one first, it always displays this one. Because the mod will, when you interact with an NPC, it will run through these dialogues 0 to 11 and show the first one it can. And because greetings was available, it could show it to me. It showed it to me every time. It doesn't matter that these had their dialogue options availability edited, this one was always available. So I go to global, dialogues, Brandon, and we set this dialogue to only be available before this quest and while it is not active, because before is before the quest is completed, but it doesn't count while the quest is being active. So you have to set it to be before and when not active. Okay, so now let me delete my player data and start that again. I'm going to go to Rose, talk to her. Okay, now I can go to Brandon. What do you want me to do? I want you to find me a wooden sword. I have the quest now. Talk to Brandon. I do not see a sword on you. Go find one. Let me grab a sword, and to demonstrate the other thing, I'm going to just name it something. And you can see that it still completes it because we said ignore NBT data to yes. The name is an NBT data tag. If I give this sword a random enchantment, you can see that it still considers the quest completed. So now I go to Brandon. Here's your sword, buddy. Thank you for that. And I go back to game mode 2. I have 5 more experience points. And now when I talk to him, thanks for the sword. Pretty sweet. In this example, I'm going to be creating a manual quest. So the manual quest will be I have to click that button and the quest will complete. There isn't any default quest type to do that, so we have to use a manual quest. So first I'm going to create a dialogue. Quest NPC AFMAL. Okay, greetings. And we're simply just going to say, hey, go press that button. Not going to mess around with options or anything. Let's go ahead and create our quest. Sorry, manual. Let's add the quest button. Press button. Alright, so manual. I'm going to make the objective name press the button. But this objective name, of course, does not mean anything. I'm going to make it an instant complete quest, so as soon as I press the button, it completes it. Now, of course, the objective name does not mean anything. So, of course, here we have the objective, press the button. Now, of course, that the objective name means nothing. If I press a button, if I put a button here and click it, nothing happens because the objective name doesn't mean anything. It is simply a dummy. So I'm going to give myself a command block. I put the button right there. I'm going to type in the command nopes quest objective at p 2 0 1. So nopes quest objective, player name, which is me at p, 2 is the quest ID because this is the second quest I created, 0 is the objective press the button because it is the first objective and it is listed from 0 to 2, and 1 is the point value because I am setting this objective to 1. So let's go around and press the button. You pressed it. Voila! I also wanted to go ahead and show making a dialogue quest so I can go over a problem people have a lot of times, but more specifically. So let's name this one problem. Add a dialogue and say read. The quest is now completed. Okay, so I'm going to assign this dialogue to this NPC, and I'm going to create another quest. This will be a dialogue quest. Alright, so let's set it to dialogue. To read. Okay, here's the first problem people encounter. They forget to set this to instant complete. And so if I give myself the quest, I have the quest dialogue, I have to read read. And so I read it, the quest is now completed, I completed it, but nothing happened. I have to right click him again to get the completed text. What you have to do is set the quest to be instant complete so you don't have to interact with the NPC again to complete the quest. You just have to read the dialogue, and as soon as it is read, boom, you complete it. Now, here's the other problem. I have read that dialogue, so now, let's start the quest again. I didn't even read the dialogue, I completed it. What happened? I already have the dialogue read. If we go to our player data and go to dialogue, you can see it's right here, in my read dialogue. I have to delete this from my player so that I can do the quest again. And now when I interact with the NPC, boom, quest completed. And that is how dialogues in Quest work. Thank you for watching. In the next episode, we will be going over how to add custom sounds and textures to custom NPCs. Welcome back to the Custom NPCs tutorial series. In this episode, we are adding custom assets into custom NPCs. So, you probably have heard or read about opening up the jar file and adding sounds and textures into the mod. This is a terrible method. First off, adding it to the jar file requires you to completely reload Minecraft every time you want to change or add something. Second, resource packs in the custom NPCs folder lets you add multiple sounds under one place sound name. Can't do that in a jar file. Third, it is much easier to just tell your players to download a pack than to add these textures in yourself or distribute the mod yourself because you have injected your own assets. Fourth, you make me angry and an angel loses their wings every time you open up the jar file. The two proper methods are to add it into the custom NPCs/assets folder or to add it into a resource pack. For either of the two proper methods, none of your file names nor folders can have any capital letters. This is what causes the purple and black texture error so many people have. For whatever reason, Minecraft does not like files or folders with capital letters. And because custom NPCs will be updated, after 1.12 it also does not like any special characters, only A through Z, 0 through 9, underscore, dash, and period. Let's go over the first method. In the .minecraft directory, there is a folder named CustomNPCs. Inside, you'll find a folder where your client clones are saved and an assets folder. Go into assets, then into CustomNPCs. You must place your textures inside of this textures folder. You can make any folders you want inside of that folder, but all your textures must be in the textures folder. Not doing so will result in weird behavior. At the time of making this video, adding textures outside of assets/CustomNPCs will crash the game when you try to load them. To add sounds, the sounds must go into the sounds folder. You can make any folder you want in here for organization. All sounds must be .ogg files. Use an online converter or a tool like Audacity to convert your sound files if need be. To actually load the sounds into Minecraft, you need to edit the sounds.json. Skip to here for the tutorial. The second method is creating a resource pack. Now I know creating a resource pack might sound scary, but trust me, it is dead simple. Make a folder in your resource packs folder. Create a text file called pack.mcmeta. Make sure file extensions are not hidden so you can change the .txt. Okay, and here's what you type. Open and close bracket, then inside, in quotations, pack, colon, another open and closed bracket, quotations, pack_format, colon, and this number here depends on what Minecraft version you are using. On screen now is the number corresponding to the Minecraft versions. Then comma, go down a line, quotations, description, colon, and then in quotations you could put whatever you want here. This is the pack description that shows up when selecting a resource pack. Alright, and we are done. We have a resource pack now. Now that we've created a pack.mcmeta, we need to add a couple more folders in order to add textures. So make a folder called assets, and then in here you can make a folder named whatever you want. If you name it something like Minecraft or CustomNPCs, it will show up under that folder when selecting a texture. But you can make your own folder. For example, here I'm going to put CNPCs. Then in that folder you created, you need to make a folder called textures. And here is where you can add all your texture files, and you can organize it however you want. In the current version, not doing these extra steps with the folders will cause the game to crash as soon as you try to select a texture. Sound is what gets a little more complicated, but don't worry. Okay, all of your sounds must go into assets/Minecraft/sounds, so create those folders. Add all your .ogg files into here. You can make new folders in here to organize, but they must be within assets/Minecraft/sounds. Then in assets/Minecraft, make a sounds.json file. And this is the format for your sounds.json. Open and closed bracket. In quotations, the play sound name. This is what you type for the play sound command and what Minecraft will show when you're selecting a sound. Colon, open and closed bracket. Go down a line, quotations, sounds, colon, open and closed square bracket. Go down a line, quotation, sound file name. This is the name of the actual file in the assets/Minecraft/sounds folder. You don't need to put the .ogg, but the file name has to be exact. And we have now successfully added a sound into our sounds.json. I'm now going to go over a couple variations you will probably use in sounds.json. If you put your sounds into any custom folders, like for example sounds/bandit, then the sound file name has to specify the path. So here you would type bandit/sound file name. If you want multiple sounds to be under one play sound name, for example having multiple different hurt sounds under just the name hurt so that they'll play randomly, you just add a comma at the end of the quotation, go to a new line, and type out the next sound name. Don't add a comma on the last line though. You can add as many sounds as you want. So in this example, we're going to have 3 sounds that can play whenever I play the sound hurt. So we're going to make our open and closed bracket, in quotations, hurt, colon, open and closed bracket, quotations, sound, colon, square bracket, quotations, bandit/hurt, comma, go down a line, quotations, bandit/hurt again, comma, go down a line, quotations, bandit/hurt double whammy. Notice I did not put a comma on the last line. Now if we go into Minecraft, every time I play the hurt sound, one of the 3 sounds is selected randomly each time. To add multiple separate sounds, the format is like so. Copy everything from the play sound name to the bracket that closes it off. Go down a line and paste it, and above put a comma in between them. Notice that I did not copy and paste the first 2 brackets here, as those encapsulate all the sound files. Only copy and paste the brackets that contain sounds and the sound file name. And remember, do not put a comma on the last item in the list, only put commas between items. If your sound file is long, like longer than a couple seconds, it's a good idea to tell Minecraft to stream it so that it loads it as it plays and not try to load the entire sound at once, because that can cause the game to freeze for a couple of seconds every time it is played. To do that, you add this. So in the square brackets for the sounds, put 2 more brackets, in quotations name, colon, quotations sound file name, comma, quotations stream, colon, true. Now if you notice, when selecting a sound on an NPC, there are multiple different categories here. You can have custom NPCs or Minecraft, and if you have any other mods installed, you'll have categories for those mods. You can actually create your own categories. To do that, make a new folder in Assets, name it whatever you want that category to be named, and put a sounds.json there. The sound files still have to be in assets/minecraft/sounds, but whatever sounds are listed in this sounds.json will appear under the other folder. You can split up your sounds into different sounds.json as well, in case you want to have multiple different folders. You will also have to specify that when using the play sound command. So if you make a folder called CNPCs and then put a sounds.json in there, you'll have to type /playsound CNPCs play sound name, category, player, position, etc., etc. And that is how you add custom assets into custom NPCs. Thank you for watching. The next video will be a brief overview of the availability options. Welcome back to the Custom NPCs tutorial series. In this episode, we are going to briefly go over the availability options. The availability options are a set of conditions that the player must meet in order to gain access to something. When the player tries to gain access to that something, the mod will check if all the conditions listed here are true for the player. If there are multiple things listed, for example dialogues, the mod will display the first one the player meets all the conditions for, regardless of the other one's availability. Now let's go over the conditions it checks. For all the conditions, the default is always. That means that nothing here is checked, and this is always true for the player. This still technically means that it's available, so if you do not edit the availability options here, then whatever this is always available. In Select Dialogue, you can set this to be available after the player has read a certain piece of dialogue, or before they have read a certain piece of dialogue, so they can only gain access to it before they read that dialogue. In Select Quest, we can set this to be available after the player has completed a quest, before the player has completed the quest, when the quest is currently active, when the quest is not active, if the quest is in the completed state. So for example, the quest was to find a wooden sword, the player has found the wooden sword but has not actually spoken to the NPC to complete it. Or if the quest can be started. This is for repeatable quest. so this is only available when the quest is able to be started once more. In Select Scoreboard, you type the name of the objective here, you set the score that the mod is checking, and then with this button, you toggle if the player score for that objective has to equal this number, has to be bigger than that number, or has to be smaller than that number. Here in Factions, you can check if this condition is true, or if this condition is not true with is or is not. So, is or is not, friendly, neutral, or unfriendly with the selected faction. In daytime, you can set this to be available during certain times of the day. You can set it to be available the entire day, only at night, or only during the day. EXP level checks if the player has or is above that experience level. And that is a brief overview of the availability options. Thank you for watching. The next episode will be random tidbits and factoids that you might find useful in custom NPCs. Hello, and welcome back to the final episode of the Custom NPCs tutorial series. In this episode, I'm just going to give some random facts, tidbits, and tips that you might find helpful for custom NPCs. I might make a sequel to this video if I can think of any other useful information, but for now, this is the final episode of the tutorial series. So, let's get right into it. If you want multiple commands to run at the end of a quest or when a dialogue is read, you can have a chain of command blocks with all the commands you want, then in the dialogue or quest, use set block, redstone block, or torch to activate that command block chain. Or you can put all the commands you want into a scene and then use the nope scene start command at the end of the dialogue or quest. The NPC's home is actually affected by night. You can load day, use the command /nopes NPC home, then load night, and do it again, and the NPC's home will change depending on if it's day or night. You can use this to make them go someplace during the day, and then back to their home at night. You can reset a scene within itself so that it can be started again without you having to do it manually. Set the game rule, send command feedback to false to hide the scene started message. If you want to TP an NPC somewhere while building, you can set their home with the command and then edit them. If you want to get rid of them without scripting or using a command, you can use a scene to teleport them. I don't like the default font for custom NPCs. If you set it to the Minecraft font using /nopes config Minecraft, it will use whatever font Minecraft is using. This also allows you to do Minecraft formatting with the ampersand symbol. So for example here, I type and k, blah 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 blah, and when I look at the dialogue, I get this effect. If you want a roll screen to only be available after a certain condition, you can create two dialogues, one that's available before that condition and another one after. The dialogue that's available after the condition can have an option that leads to the role. Using a command block and a scoreboard check, you can have a quest start automatically when the player enters an area. This is for 1.12, so here I would have in this command block, Nope's quest start at P, in square brackets r equal 20, so that's a radius of 20 blocks, comma, score underscore quest started equal 1, and then the quest ID. And then in another chain command block, we set the quest started score for the player to be 2. The reason you need a scoreboard check is because the command ignores availability or repeatable conditions. Even if you've done the quest, it will give the quest again, so you have to have a scoreboard check so it doesn't start it twice. If you want a dialogue to only show up once, set it to be available before itself. All of your player data and custom NPC things are stored externally in the world folder in the custom NPCs folder. All of your dialogues, quests, etc., etc. The actual NPCs themselves are not stored in a folder, they are saved like any other entity in Minecraft. You won't find a folder with every zombie, just like how you won't find a folder with all the NPCs. And that was my list of random facts and tidbits that you might have found helpful. Thank you for watching. Now that we are at the end, I would like to do a bit of a shameless self-plug and ask that you all check out my Minecraft map, Daruma. All of my knowledge about custom NPCs was gained by working on this map for 6 years, so I would greatly appreciate you going out and trying it.